Before we jump ahead, it's very important to note there are going to most likely be spoilers. So if you have not seen this movie yet,
Hold on, David. Some of them don't know what a spoiler is.
okay. So if you haven't seen it yet, completely understandable. Some of us don't feel comfortable going to the theaters yet. Some of us just it's some of us it isn't even released in the markets that you live in yet. So this episode will be here when you're ready to check it out after you see the film. But know that going ahead. I mean, could we even spoil anything? Because even if we tell you the ending, you're still not going to know what's happening.
But my thing is, are we even spoiling it? Haven't they already seen it? Isn't it happening now?
That's true.
So there we go. So spoiler alert, not. There we go. So on to the talking points, David. One of the things I first noticed about this film is that I didn't know anything about this film. I was home one day and of course the trailer just came out. So I usually like to go and do my research at whoever wants to insert sponsor right here. I go do my research there. And one of the things I found fascinating is that with the film this big and with this big budget or whatnot, how the G14 level of secrecy when it came to the script, not even just with the main actors there. Of course, Michael Caine himself even said he didn't get his lines to almost the day before or the day of. And when you think about it, all you filmmakers out there who just got across the T's, dot I's, this has to be perfect. Michael Caine, the veteran, iconic actor that he is, got his lines like literally a day before, and again, still delivered in the film, but I think we can tell that he got his lines the day before. If we're being honest, we got to be honest with you guys. But, and even when you're talking about the secrecy of the film, you're talking about being with two of the main actors being locked inside Nolan's office, even being seeing the script from John David Washington to Robert Pattinson. So with these guys, with the acting chops that they have, having to really dig through that script. I remember when you gave me the script for Kill about 2 years ago. I couldn't stop going through it, but it's like you lock yourself in, and so it's just that was amazing for me that a big budget film like this, that the actors really don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, and what is happening? Like, so inverting. This is what Tenet is all about. So it's Christopher Nolan's take on time travel. Through inverting, and I thought it was the most interesting way to convey time travel, or at least a new take, a great new take on time travel to like, as in they are, when someone inverts, they begin moving through time in reverse from the moment that they enter the vortex. It's time travel, but it's in real time, so they're still aging. It's mind.
It really is, and when you think about it, it's really based on. I know for a fact that what he did was, even though it is inverting, he still sought out the advice of course, credible scientists who in this field knew what were going on. And one of the things that they applied to this was entropy, which is, of course, basically the second degree of thermodynamics. So they're using all of this stuff.
Mother.
So they're using all of these things and to me now I can get into this more because it's not like you just made this up. Like you really put time, effort, and thought into this, and you're bringing in scientists who've done this their whole life to try to make this thing work. It makes me pay attention even more. So that's why I say I dug into that before I even saw the movie because I knew nothing about it.
Yeah, and the crazy thing that dawned on me when I was doing the deep dive is that each time somebody inverts, they're essentially creating three different like parallel versions or three different versions of themselves,
if you will.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not even sure if they still exist on the same timeline, just in different points on the same timeline. Because if you think about it, when a person inverts, one, you have the inverted version of themselves that's now going backwards through time. You have the present version is right here that keeps going forward. So you have them going like this, and then eventually the inverted person though gets to that vortex where they can begin going forward again. So they split again at that point, and you have the third one just going forward through time, just a little bit or so, however far behind the original present version. Not to mention the one that's now inverted. It's
the crazy part about it is I understand exactly what you just said, which blows my mind because we've had time to digest it. I think for one of the first times, and I'm not saying it's the first time, but for one of the first times, what we've seen is to where it does not create multiple branches. In the film, they say, of course, again, spoiler alert right here, they mention to you like, hey, listen, while he send one team's back, he sends one team forward, but he still stays present. So he has it's like basically, so there aren't different branches of the timeline. There's just at different points. So it's always like covering your mistakes and knowing what's going on. Like the present sends the future ahead and sends the past back to cover the past. So no mistakes can be made. This can't happen. So to me, it's one of the first times to where I've seen where it is a, like you said, inverted time travel film. But I want to go deeper on that. Like what I was doing my research on this, I started thinking to myself, okay, like how many films have we seen that have really discussed time travel and what were the effects on them? Of course, when you want to talk about, of course, Back to the Future and our most famous invention ever, the flux capacitor.
How about Time Cop?
Oh, I love Time Cop. I didn't even have that on the list. Not only that, we have, of course, with the most recent Marvel's Avengers Endgame, of course, we had Hot Tub Time Machine. Had to throw it in there for all you hippies. Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise. We're seeing all of these things happen. Not only Edge of Tomorrow, then you're talking about Inception. Now, of course, clearly, we don't have to tell you that's a Nolan film, but when you talk about Inception, he's one of the first directors to do this. Christopher Nolan has now done 2 different time associated films where time theory is completely different in both of them. Like he is literally melting your mind with Inception, and he comes back and melts your mind now with Tenet. Here's what really blew my mind. Now, this is while I'm doing the research on this, I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, here is the beautiful part about it. The tie-in for this film was okay. We've been talking about John David Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in Tenet, which is a movie based about time, correct?
Yeah.
His father is obviously who?
Denzel.
You ever heard of this movie called Deja Vu? I think this is the first father and son combo who is awesome to both do time movies, which are both dope and awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say that, man. Did you know that?
I did not. Well, I mean, I knew that Denzel did Deja Vu, but I didn't make that correlation. That's pretty awesome.
It is, man.
All right, so let's talk about the ending, which is really the beginning, which is really just the whole thing on a loop. It's my theory. I call it the tragedy of Neil. Or Max. Dun dun dun. So Max is the boy that, and I have not committed the characters in this film, but the lead female that the protagonist is pretty much protecting. Max is her son. What if Max is Neil? What if Max grows up to be Neil? And I'll explain that. So at the end, Neil reveals to the protagonist that he recruited him in the protagonist's future, Neil's past. Neil then goes to complete the final mission, taking the bullet for the protagonist, which we see in the beginning. That's the tragedy in Neil, is that he, in this cycle, in this, like, I think of it like Groundhog Day, except it's not a 24-hour period. It's like a few lifetimes that are just stuck on this constant loop, and it doesn't matter what any of these players do. It doesn't change anything. And Neil's purpose in this loop is to sacrifice himself for the protagonist, John David Washington, so he can go on to create Tenet and recruit Neil and protect Max. It's almost like a Terminator situation where somebody goes back in time, or somebody sends somebody from the future to protect themselves as a child. I feel like something like that's going on there. So, and at the end we see the protagonist watching over Max and his mom, which kind of, I feel like, why show that unless you're setting that up? And if you think about it, like Maximilian, Maximilien, he could change that name to Neil, drop the last part, or drop the first part, and invert the last part, and that's how you end up getting Neil. So that's where my mind is going with the whole thing, that eventually...
Man, he really did a number on you, didn't he?
He grows up. Maximilian grows up, changes his name to Neil, eventually inverts on a mission to begin working back through time to the point where he takes the bullet for the protagonist, saving his life, like a cycle that keeps repeating. And that is that's like the perfect, it's like a time travel tragedy.
Okay. Now, I jokingly say he really did a number on you because apparently he did a number on me too. Because as much as I want to dispute everything you said, what regardless of whatever I'm finna say out of my mouth, it cannot be credited or discredited either. So I'm just gonna say, bravo, young man, you made it to the end of a theory. And for me, what it was is that with this film, I feel like I was. I feel like I was a kid in a divorce. I feel like we didn't get to see mommy, we didn't get to see daddy. But I got to come to proceedings with mommy and daddy. What I mean is, I don't feel like we truly were. On purpose, I don't feel like the director wanted us to know truly what the beginning or the end was. It's like, hey, I'm gonna throw you in right here. Everything that you're seeing is the cause and effect of what you don't see. So I'm not gonna give you, hey, listen, here's A, here's Z, but I'm gonna damn sure give you B through Y. And go figure. But I'm going to give you that. It's up for, because see, now A and Z is up for what me and him are doing and what you all are going to be doing. There's going to be a million fan theories, this, that, and the other. And technically, until the director, sometimes the director doesn't even know what he wants. Art is interpreted differently, and that's the beautiful part of art. We all can look at a painting and see different things. So truly, I mean, none of us can truly be right or wrong. But for me, when I look at it, what I saw it as, at the end of it, for me was this. Even though simply knowing the future doesn't mean it's the future. What I took from this was this, is that John David Washington's character, while recruiting himself and doing all these things, he knew everything, almost like a godlike complex. He knew what was going to happen, because remember, with the TENET program, you can be in the present, send someone in the past, and send someone in the future. You can be omnipresent, almost like a god. Drop that in there, dropping knowledge. See how to slow them thing, I put them things on it for you, that omnipresence. But with that being said, so he knew. Is it fair to say? Can we both agree that he knew the outcome? Is it fair to say that John David Washington's character?
See,
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I feel like Neil is the only one that knows, that has already been through the whole cycle, from as far as you can go into the future to as far as you can go into the past. Because he's the one. He said, "My story's ending. Yours is just beginning."
And he says, "I'll meet you in the beginning."
Yeah.
And he does say that to him. Okay, so fair enough. I'll give you that. Neil, if you wonder who he keeps saying Neil, we're trying to get you guys to associate that's Pattinson's character. So when that happens there, the reason why I say at the end that I feel like it's one of those, like, you can still change fate, because we know what happened. At the end, John David Washington character shows back up. Knowing now you can at least admit this, at the end he knew everything that happened. And when he meets with the Indian lady in the car, and forgive me for not knowing her name, but when he meets with her, he still gave her a chance. Like, at that very moment, she could have chose to do something that she could have not killed the girl, and she had not done that thing. Now the future does change because the person changed. So at the end, to me, it's a movie to where as people we can still change the future. That's the underlying tone I took from that. Even knowing that destruction is near, he still gave her a chance. He could have just killed her and said, "No, I'm gonna just kill her." He watched her. He gave her up until that very moment. So she already knew, because early in the film, he told her what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Yet she still says, "It's nothing I do." He's like, "Yes, you can." So at the middle of the film, he's telling her about the end. Like, "You can do this." He's giving her a pep talk. Like, "I'm coming back to kill you in like 3 days. This is your chance."
Yeah.
What'd she do? Shut her nose and spot her face.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
I'm in no position to, literally zero position to argue with that in any way. I can't even really hold up my own theory, let alone push against yours.
Look what you did, Chris. Congratulations.
Just like on the call with Jeremy that we'll get to later, he had a theory. So we had 3 different competing theories on one episode about this movie, and I can't decipher which one.
4. John David Washington's too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well.
So
the movie itself, like what you're saying, the how the word's a palindrome, how you can go forwards or backwards with it. The whole movie, that came from like the Seder Square.
I did that game with the 5 little, because the characters were named after them, correct?
Well, I'll get to that in the big fights. As far as how the Seder Square plays into many aspects of the movie, but Tenet being the center point of the Seder Square, I think it's interesting that, like, I feel like this movie is almost like a Pink Floyd album. You have to put it on the record player and play it in reverse in order to fully get the message that the creator is wanting to put out there. And I honestly believe if we played this movie backwards, or not actually backwards, but chronologically backwards, like see this scene, then this scene, and this scene going in reverse, I feel like it would act at almost like a Seder square where it doesn't matter what direction you turn it, it's still going to play out the same way.
Check this out. I came up with this when I was doing my research. I came up with this. I said, if I had to describe this film to anyone, and I think you may agree with me on this. This may be our one time we agree with the whole thing. If someone said, "Give me this film in one sentence," which is almost impossible, I would say, if a kaleidoscope and a Rubik's cube had a baby, it would be called Tenet.
Kaleidoscope and a Rubik. Yeah, yeah. And if I could sum it up into like one word for people, for Christopher Nolan fans, I would just say it is Memento on heroin.
That's for all my
Or
drug
no,
users.
actually, I'd say it's Memento on Adderall.
Oh, so now you're just focused.
Yeah, because Memento on heroin is just kind of like I'm going. Actually, it could be because you're going through time really slow.
And it's at this very moment where we tell the kids of America, dare, don't you do drugs, kids. We're from the 80s. We didn't do them, and look how we turned out. Next.
But the coolest thing about the movie, like, what I could take, because with something like this, at first you just have to digest it on an abstract level. Like, what is it trying to say abstractly? You're going to break your brain trying to figure out what's literally taking place. And I could only imagine what the storyboards must have looked like in the production room, because Christopher Nolan actually did, like we heard with Jeremy, they did shoot everything forward and backwards. So every scene shot twice, plots here and plots here later in the movie, and then circling back to those plots somehow and doing them, shooting them again, not just reversing stuff. No green screens used, like, unbelievable. So you take all that, that's great, but on like a human emotion level, what I really took away from it was how it challenges our ideas about fate, predestination, free will. Like, are we predetermined to do the things that we're going to do? And you touched on that with, like, you think they can change things. I am not so sure. That's the only part about your theory that, and I don't have a reasonable explanation to explain why, but just the way things play out in Tenet, it just feels like they're on a predetermined loop. And
well, no, because I'm going to argue against my own argument now, so I can at least hedge my bets here. Because part of me made me feel that way. Because they a couple of times throughout the film, they definitely mention it and they make it clear. That's one of the things they make clear, that we're not changing anything. We're just pulling the bullet and putting it back into the gun. It's still going to fire no matter when. We're just pulling it out for right now to do whatever they're doing. But they make that clear several times. It's just, for me, at the end, it's John David Washington's character, even knowing John David Washington's character, even knowing at that time, when he comes in at the end, and with that Indian lady, it's almost like, even if she was on a predetermined, part of him still wanted her to change. So yeah, when you speak about that, I almost have to side with you and say that throughout the movie, they definitely drilled into our head that things are predetermined, but we still can go back and, I guess, affect the past and the present, but the present and the past determines the future, which cannot be changed. Is that fair?
That's fair, and I think we could also agree on this. Seder, the villain in the movie,
So-called villain,
he's got like the cancer, and he's got the life thing on him that's gonna take the whole world out with him when he goes.
right?
Worst suicide bomber in history.
Oh, definitely horrible.
That's the trailer.